It's Nolan.
Now, before we get started, make sure y'all hitting that like button. Make sure y'all sharing it on your respective platforms. Let somebody know what we're doing today. Now, let's get into the show.
Break. Winning, they win. Putting on me and my friends. Slipped up and set in the trend. Oops, I did it again. Winning, they win. Putting on me and my friends. Slipped up and set in the trend. Oops, I did it again. Winning, they win. Putting on me and my friends. Slipped up and set in the trend. Oops, I did it again. Winning, they win. Putting on me and my friends. Slipped up and set in the trend. Oops, I did it again. 100% I'm authentic. I don't get down with the gimmicks. I keep it real. Never get bothered by critics that never been out in the field. Don't care how they feel. Stand on my pride, I'm drawing a line. Making more money than y'all combined. You're spending your days, you're watching for mine. You're reaching your hand, I won't give you a dime. I drew the plays. Hitting the gym for them 2 days. People be coming with Q&As. I just revive with a new phase. I'm a survivor, went through the maze. Right off these niggas, then turn the page. Nobody stopping me ever. I'm dedicated to having my way, I'ma get it, cause I'm so much better. I keep a winning mentality, turning my dreams to reality. Put in the work for my salary. Try to copy me, that does not flatter me. I'm the best, you can check my anatomy. When I rest, I'm recharging my battery. You been naked just like the academy. Take a pic, this is something you never be. Greatness. Quit playing bitch in my pavement. New nurse, I ain't got no patience. No money, I swim in that fragrance. New crib, I'm setting locations. Cooking up spill sauce on the apron. Clocked in, I don't need no training. My brain make all my statement.
What's going on, beautiful people? It's the kid J Nolan here. Welcome back to another episode of Inside the Industry, your number one source for music, entertainment, commentary, and breakdowns. Hope everybody's doing well out there this evening. Real quick, I want to just thank everybody that tuned into the show last night on my Drake transcript reading back from June 30th. You know, the transcript got released yesterday, and we went through the whole thing and showed how UMG and Drake's lawyers went back and forth with the judge and how Drake's lawyers ultimately got cooked, in my opinion. I want to thank everybody that tuned in. We got over 43,000 views in less than 24 hours. Wow. I appreciate y'all. Gained a whole bunch of new subscribers. We're almost at 32,000 off of the people that checked in from that video. So thank y'all once again. Now, in this particular video, we're going to be getting into UMG and Lucian Grainge in particular, because we've been talking about Lucian all week, right? We talked about one instance where somebody was basically putting out the projection that Drake was trying to replace Lucian at UMG as the CEO of the company, which I told y'all, I think that's super far-fetched. I mean, he doesn't even have a job at the company. He's literally an artist signed to Republic, which is a subsidiary of UMG, and although he has money that comes in from UMG, he doesn't hold any sort of executive position. So he would literally have to clear out the entire office and be like grandfathered in, which I don't really see that happening, right? We talked about that. Then right after we talked about that, Drake and his legal team put in their request to have Lucian Grainge and his emails submitted into discovery, right? Because they want to get into his alleged involvement, or what they believe is his involvement in the creation of Not Like Us. They're basically trying to say that he was privy to it. He understood and played a role in the creation of the record, the recording, the image, the video, and that he was a vital part as to how this whole thing came about. They basically saying Lucian Grainge colluded with Kendrick Lamar and Interscope Records to take Drake out of his top spot. Like this was a plan that happened in the back room that Drake claims he plans to expose, right? So now we have an official statement from Lucian Grainge replying and letting it be known, son, I brought you along this whole way, but you done lost your motherfucking mind. All right, I'm not going to put any more of my own sauce on it. We're going to get into the paperwork. Let's just go through the filings as they've been submitted. So first, before we get to Lucian, we have a letter here from UMG in opposition to his motion to compel to, make Lucian have to submit to discovery. So they say, Dear Judge Vargas, in his first motion to compel, plaintiff Aubrey Drake Graham, as in Drake, seeks to have Sir Lucian Grainge added as a document custodian because he is the CEO of defendant UMG Recordings Inc.'s indirect parent corporation Universal Music Group NV. Drake does so even though he previously agreed not to seek documents from Sir Lucian Grainge in light of UMG's agreement to designate and produce relevant documents from 11 document custodians, including the CEO of Interscope Records, the label that released Not Like Us. So UMG is saying, hey, this dude already agreed not to bother Lucian Grainge. But now he's changing his tune, which I'm sure there's paperwork already submitted stating that he wouldn't be in the document custodians. Drake's motion is a transparent attempt to use discovery to harass UMG and force it to waste time and resources out of spite. The premise of Drake's motion that he could not have lost a rap battle unless it was the product of some imagined secret conspiracy going to the top of UMG's corporate structure is absurd. So UMG is saying Drake cannot fathom the fact that he lost this massive rap battle in front of the world without some sort of corporate conspiracy. They say that is absurd. Sir Lucian is the CEO of a multinational enterprise. His days are spent determining and implementing global strategy, not vetting individual tracks or album covers or driving the release and promotional plans for any one recording. And even if Sir Lucian had any responsive documents, they would surely be captured by discovery from UMG's other document custodians who were actually responsible for releasing and promoting Not Like Us. So they're saying we got 11 other people on file who actually had to deal with the promotion of Not Like Us, but for whatever reason, you're trying to throw him into the mix and make it look ugly and muddy the waters. They say his motion should be denied. Drake begins his motion by citing a case not involving document custodians to incorrectly assert that once plaintiff has shown relevance, the burden is on UMG to show why the requested discovery is not justified. In the footnotes, it says, indeed, UMG has already produced nearly 3,500 confidential documents from these custodians. Drake, by contrast, has produced only his counsel's communications with UMG and public articles and social media posts, nearly all of which were pulled from the internet in the past few months. So they're saying, come on, man. We've literally given you 3,500 confidential documents. Have you even gone through that? And you're still asking for more. You're even going against our prior agreement to bring him, as in Lucian, into this when we've already been compliant. They say you, on the other hand, only have produced your counsel's communications with us, some little emails and a few public articles and social media posts, which most of them aren't even available anymore. As to the issue here, the identification and selection of custodians, that is not the law. In fact, it is well settled that absent agreement among the parties, the responding party is entitled to select the custodians most likely to possess responsive information and to search the files of those individuals. That choice is not disturbed unless it is manifestly unreasonable or the requesting party demonstrates that the resulting production is deficient. At a minimum, Drake bears the burden in showing that the requested custodian is likely to have non-cumulative relevant documents. Okay? This burden cannot be met with mere speculation. Drake fails to meet his burden to show that Sir Lucian has documents that are both relevant and non-cumulative. As an initial matter, Sir Lucian has at most only minimal relevance to this action. As Sir Lucian explains, because he runs a publicly traded multi-billion-dollar multinational corporation, he does not get into the weeds as to the release and promotion of any particular sound recording. Declaration of Sir Lucian Grainge, which we're going to get into in just a moment. Sir Lucian, in fact, never heard the recording Not Like Us, nor ever saw the corresponding cover art or music video until after they were released by Interscope Records. And while Sir Lucian has financial oversight of and responsibility for UMG's global business, the proposition that he was involved in, much less responsible for reviewing and approving the content of Not Like Us, its cover art or music video, or for determining or directing the promotion of those materials is groundless and indeed ridiculous. In contrast, Drake's attempts to show Sir Lucian's relevance are so strained that they defy credulity. Drake cites to his own information and belief, which they tried to rip apart in that that oral argument that we went over last night. His allegations that Sir Lucian was, quote unquote, involved in the publication of Not Like Us and played a key role in approving the publication and or failing to prevent the music video's publication. Here we go again with this jargon of failing to prevent. Meaning, he wanted UMG to step in and tell Kendrick, you cannot release this music video. And he wanted them to also force him to make edits in the song, which they did not comply. But these allegations, which do not plead that Sir Lucian necessarily did anything at all, are unaccompanied by any facts and thus amount to nothing more than mere speculation. Okay, which does nothing to show that Sir Lucian likely has non-cumulative relevant documents, especially given Sir Lucian's sworn declaration to the contrary. Drake's reliance on these allegations is rendered even more ridiculous by his assertion that since the filing of the AC, that's the amended complaint, his lawsuit, he went in and made changes. Plaintiff now also has reason to believe that Grainge was personally involved in decisions made regarding the marketing and promotion of the recording around its release. If Drake has facts that he believes substantiates his bald assertion is crazy. Where's the rest of that? He blank. Maybe there's going to be a continuation at the bottom of this. That Sir Lucian briefly passed Drake on an... Hold on. That Sir Lucian briefly praised Drake on an earnings call in 2022 also lacks any connection to potentially relevant documents. I believe that's where that $400 million deal was made, 2022. Nor does Drake even attempt to explain how his motion is supported by the fact that Sir Lucian wrote in the introduction to UMG's code of conduct that we are accountable for the decisions we make and how we conduct ourselves. And Drake's reliance on portions of the code of conduct that he implicitly concedes Sir Lucian did not write is even farther afield. But that's what Drake and his lawyers are doing. They're trying to piecemeal their arguments together. They're taking phrases out of much longer statements and they're trying to submit it to the court without any additional context. And as we saw in that hearing, Drake's lawyers don't even want the judge to look into the additional context. Just take everything we're saying at its face as we present it and make your ruling in our favor. Likewise, Sir Lucian's denial of false allegations related to Sean Combs, because they tried to throw Lucian into the Diddy stuff, the alleged impact of the competition between record labels on Interscope's CEO and Drake's legal demands provide no indication at all that Sir Lucian has relevant documents. Particularly strange and petty, wow, they put that in parentheses, and petty is Drake's assertion that Sir Lucian should be added as a custodian because he celebrated a Grammy win by Kendrick Lamar, one of UMG's artists, as I stated yesterday, something that is obviously irrelevant, but that surely annoyed Drake. They ripping your ass apart, sir. The only occasion where Drake even attempts to connect Sir Lucian to the elements of his claims is to argue that discovery from Sir Lucian could be relevant to actual malice. But even this agreement is lacking. When there are multiple owners involved in an organization defending its publication of a defamatory statement, the plaintiff must identify the individual responsible for publication of a statement, and it is that individual the plaintiff must prove acted with actual malice, which would not be Lucian Grainge. It would be somebody over at Interscope. But Drake again can point to nothing to suggest that Sir Lucian, the CEO of the entire company, is the individual responsible for publishing Not Like Us. Not to mention the fact that Not Like Us was released directly via Kendrick Lamar before it was even claimed by Interscope. So Kendrick Lamar and PG Lang, or Kendrick Lamar himself, because remember, all these diss records came out under Kendrick Lamar's name before they had Interscope listed at a later time. At its core, Drake's motion seeks discovery from Sir Lucian based on the speculation that his position as a senior executive might increase the relevance of his files, but as courts have repeatedly held, this is not a basis for designating him as a custodian. All right, now I'm not going to get into all the case law references and stuff. We're going to skip that stuff. Moreover, any relevant documents in Sir Lucian's possession would surely be captured by searches of UMG's 11 other custodians. For this to be otherwise, Sir Lucian would not only have to have been involved in the events underlying this case, but would have to have done so in a way that somehow excluded the individuals actually responsible for the publication and promotion of Not Like Us. Drake never actually denies that the vast majority of whatever relevant documents Sir Lucian has are likely duplicated elsewhere. He asserts that this duplicativeness issue is meaningless and irrelevant, but long-standing discovery principles require a movement to demonstrate that discovery from additional custodians would be relevant and non-duplicative. Trying to get through some of this case law stuff here because we don't even know what all this is. Drake's denigration of the relevant standard betrays his inability to meet it. Drake's argument about deduping is both inconsistent with this weight of authority and also misses the obvious point. If whatever relevant documents Sir Lucian has are eliminated by deduping, then searching the irrelevant documents that remain would have only minimal marginal value. Even the case Drake cites recognizes that duplicativeness concerns should preclude adding another custodian if the party otherwise produces a considerable volume of documents. And here, UMG is producing documents from 11 custodians. Drake's argument that he needs to know whether a particular document was in Sir Lucian's possession or sent by him is a non sequitur, since communications produced from the 11 designated custodians will show what was sent or received by Sir Lucian. Drake's barb about UMG's untested averments is mooted by Sir Lucian's declaration. Once again, we're going to get to that in a second. And regardless, his argument inverts what is Drake's burden to justify Sir Lucian as a custodian and would circularly require UMG to conduct the very discovery at issue, which is why it has been repeatedly rejected. All right, where's the next thing? Contrary to Drake's assertion that discovery dispute is not about the viability of Drake's claims, though they are indeed meritless, but rather whether Sir Lucian has any non-duplicative materials relevant to those claims. Ultimately, Drake resorts to a heads I win, tails you lose. Damn, Roland. Drake resorts to a heads I win, tails you lose argument, asserting that Sir Lucian should be added as a custodian regardless of whether he is likely to have any non-duplicative relevant documents. In other words, Drake argues that Sir Lucian must be a custodian for no other reason than because Drake asked for him. That is entirely inconsistent with the law and is particularly inappropriate given that Drake's request is clearly based on a desire to harass UMG rather than for a legitimate reason. Drake's motion should be denied. So this is UMG's lawyer stepping up to the plate and giving a fully fleshed out reason as to why Drake's request for Lucian Grainge's emails and communications to be revealed. Because they're saying we already have 11 other custodians that communicated with him, if at all. So you would see all of the communications anyway because they're going to be in the discovery we're submitting from these 11 people. You already agreed not to go into Lucian shit. But now you ain't feeling so good about yourself, so now you want to throw him back into the mix even though we already discussed this and that was not an issue. All right, now let's get to what Lucian said specifically. Declaration of Sir Lucian Grainge, CBE, pursuant to 28 U.S.C. 1746, I, Lucian Grainge, declare as follows. I am the chairman and CEO of Universal Music Group NV, which is the indirect parent corporation of defendant UMG Recordings. Plaintiff Aubrey Drake Graham claims that I was behind a scheme to devalue his brand through the release and promotion of the Kendrick Lamar recording Not Like Us, an allegation that makes no sense due to the fact that the company that I run, Universal Music Group NV, has invested hundreds of millions of dollars in Drake, including long-standing and critical financial support for his recording career, the purchase and ownership of the bulk of his recording catalog, and the purchase of his music publishing rights. So now that $400 million deal from 2022 is starting to look a little different now, right? Because Drake is saying, y'all are out here trying to devalue me. Y'all trying to take me out the top. Lucian says, now what benefit would that serve to me? I gave you 400 M's. I've helped you in your career. I've bought your recording catalog, put money in your pocket for it. And I've purchased your music publishing rights, right? Because Drake is in a deal with UMG and UMPG, which is the publishing arm of the company. And it sounds kind of like they might have went out and put some money down for that shit Lil Wayne sold, but I can't say. So why would I devalue you when all your value brings value to me? Because I invested heavily into you. It also makes no sense whatsoever, as I run a publicly traded multi-billion-dollar multinational corporation whose operations in over 60 countries, he's flexing on you now, covering nearly 200 markets, ultimately report up to me. Our business encompasses over 100 record labels, as well as a multinational music publishing division, global merchandise, and direct-to-consumer businesses, the worldwide Virgin Music Label Services, short and long-form audio-visual production, and a variety of other businesses, each with its own CEO/president and its own management structure. What makes you think I would do something specifically thinking about you when this is all that's on my plate? I'm delegating hundreds and thousands of positions from my seat, and you think I'm sitting around saying, yeah, let's get them. Collectively, these businesses issue tens of thousands of releases and product each month. My focus is on developing and implementing the global strategy that will shape UMG for generations to come. In light of this responsibility, the proposition that I am in the weeds as to the release and promotion of any particular sound recording from the thousands of UMG releases throughout the world is farcical. Farcical. Interesting. I've heard of a farce, but farcical. All right, nigga, flexing your vocabulary. Given my role, I am accustomed and unfortunately largely resigned to personal attacks. He said, everybody want to take shots at me. Because I'm the top of the food chain. Everybody want to take shots at Lucian. All right? Heavy is the head that wears the crown. And I further recognize that a frequent strategy of UMG's litigation opponents is to attempt to waste my and UMG's time and resources with discovery of the sort that Drake is seeking here. Either in an attempt to gain media attention, he said you're doing a publicity stunt, you sending this stuff through the docket because you know people are reading it, or in an effort to force some kind of commercial renegotiation or financial concessions. So he's saying either you trying to just make us look bad, or you're trying to put us in a corner to make us acquiesce to your financial requests. Sounds to me, he don't give a damn about neither. He says, but given Drake's motion, I would like to make it quite clear that I never heard the recording Not Like Us, nor ever saw the corresponding cover art or music video until after they were released by Interscope Records. Whilst as part of my role, I certainly have financial oversight of and responsibility for UMG's global businesses, the proposition that I was involved in, much less responsible for, reviewing and approving the content of Not Like Us, its cover art or music video, or for determining or directing the promotion of those materials, is groundless and indeed ridiculous. He says, I wasn't there for none of this stuff, man. There's a whole record label, Interscope, that handles all that. Why the fuck would they involve me in it? I declare under penalty of perjury that the foregoing is true and correct, executed on August 14th in Monterey, California. All right, Sir Lucian Grainge submitted this to the courts yesterday, right after my video ended. And here is the final upload from UMG. about letter opposition to Drake's motion to compel certain requests for production. They've already addressed Lucian Grainge. Now they're getting into some of the others, okay? So, dear Judge Vargas, Drake's second letter motion seeks to compel the production of documents responding to certain requests for production. Drake seeks, inter alia, production of Kendrick Lamar's full recording contract, documents showing the value of Lamar's recording catalog since January 2020, Interscope's monthly revenues and profits over the same period, and Interscope CEO John Janik's executive compensation for the last 5 years. So these are all things that Drake wants submitted into discovery. He wants his lawyers to have access to all of these contracts and figures, right? Once again, Kendrick's full contract, which they've been requesting for months. They want to know the value of Kendrick Lamar's recording catalog. I find that to be very interesting. The value of yours was $400 million in UMG's eyes, but now he's saying, well, how much is his worth? How much y'all paying him? How much y'all willing to, if he were to sell his pub, if he were to sell his music, his catalog, what would he get? Would he get more than me? Well, he's not going to. I think it would be a very interesting day that Kendrick Lamar decides to sell his catalog. All right. And of course, he wants Interscope's monthly revenues. He wants to see how much Kendrick's valuation in the marketplace has increased between 2020 and 2025, specifically after Not Like Us came out. They want to see how much his value raised since that record came out, because they're going to try to use that as a scapegoat. And they want to know CEO John Janik's executive compensation package, and they want to know what his incentives were, because they believe that John Janik was also in on this conspiracy to defame Drake, which ultimately, in Drake's eyes, means it just lines his pockets more and gives him fatter bonuses. As with this motion concerning Sir Lucian Grainge, this motion is nothing but an obvious attempt to misuse the discovery process to pursue irrelevant and overbroad requests principally calculated to harass, embarrass, or annoy Drake's perceived adversaries. They're saying you're just trying to be a pest. This includes Kendrick Lamar, who is plainly the real target of Drake's anger. Ooh, I love it. You're not suing Kendrick Lamar, but you want all this stuff that deals with him. If this is all about one song that he released and you feel that it defamed you, then why are you trying to get all of this additional information about this man? Why are you looking into this man's paternity? Why are you looking into this man's non-existent domestic violence history that you tried to put on record? And since you don't have the records for yourself, you say, well, make them submit it. This includes Kendrick Lamar, who is plainly the real target of Drake's anger, Interscope Records, the label that distributes, Lamar's recordings, Interscope, CEE, John Janik, and UMG more broadly. Drake's relevance arguments for these invasive and overbroad requests are unfounded. They say while broad discovery is available under Rule 26 of the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure, it is not without its limits. All right. Requests 11 and 12. Drake seeks Interscope CEO John Janik's private and highly confidential compensation details going back to 2021, 4 years before Not Like Us was even released. Yet Drake makes no attempt to explain how his intrusive request for 5 years' worth of individual compensation records is conceivably relevant or proportional to this case, which centers on the release and promotion of a single track and music video in 2024. I'm telling y'all, he wants to compare and contrast what he made prior to Not Like Us and what he made after Not Like Us became one of the biggest songs in the world. He didn't write that down, but they're pointing out, hey, he's not saying why he wants it. Of course, that's why he wants it. They say there is none. And his arguments in support of discovery of any of Mr. Janik's compensation information, none of which even attempts to link Mr. Janik's compensation to any decision to release Not Like Us in particular, fail miserably. Now, in Drake's lawsuit, he claims that John Janik is in a war, right? Because he's the CEO of Interscope. However, Lucian Grainge is the top dog at UMG. And everybody knows at some point, Lucian Grainge is going to retire. They've been talking about Lucian's potential retirement for the last couple of years. Remember when his son went over and took over Atlantic? And they say that they want to see him prove himself over Atlantic over a course of years, because he also is allegedly in the running to take over CEO of UMG spot whenever his father, Lucian Grainge, retires. So there's a big rat race in the industry of who's going to get that seat. So Drake is saying John Janik is competing for it. He says that Avery and Monty Littman at Republic, which is who he signed to, are also competing for that position. So he believes that these guys in these positions at Interscope and Republic are trying to devise any possible plan that they can drive up the value of their company to impress Lucian so that he can feel comfortable resigning from his position and knighting one of them as the new guy. We'll continue. They say Drake's only explanation for seeking Mr. Janik's compensation details is that Mr. Janik was incentivized to promote Lamar, his music, because as CEO of Interscope, his bonus is based in part on Interscope's financial performance. Tellingly, Drake does not argue that such an arrangement would have given Mr. Janik any incentive to promote Kendrick Lamar over any other Interscope artist, or Not Like Us over any other recording that Mr. Janik thought might be a commercial success. Instead, Drake manufactures the basis for such a motive out of thin air, speculating that because UMG's CEO encourages competition between its record label divisions, UMG's compensation structure must be a zero-sum game that pitted Lamar's label against Drake's label. See, I just said that. He's been talking about it in his lawsuit the whole time. All right, where'd I stop? Zero-sum game pitted, blah, blah, blah. But this theory is nowhere to be found in Drake's complaint, which states only that Mr. Janik's bonus is based primarily on the financial success of Interscope. The proposition that Mr. Janik or any other corporate executive running a division of a large business is partly compensated based on the performance of that division is entirely unremarkable. Like, that's not something special. When artists make hit songs, everybody eats. Drake is not entitled to discovery into UMG's most sensitive and highly guarded records, which are not public anywhere, let alone 5 years of them based on such a flimsy showing. You said your shit flimsy, boy. RFP number 12 runs even further afield of any relevance claim. Drake seeks Interscope's 2024 executive incentive metrics, targets, projections, and performance used to determine annual incentive compensation for Interscope's executives and officers. Very intimate details about the company and their goals. Drake offers no basis for this request beyond the meritless arguments about Mr. Janik. That is not surprising, as his complaint makes no allegations about the compensation of any other Interscope executive. The request is nothing but a fishing expedition that should be denied. They say discovery must be focused on the actual claims and defenses involved in the action. Requests 29 and 30. 29 seeks all documents from January 2020 to present relating to any instruction, direction, or suggestion that any song or music video over which UMG has contractual rights or control of any kind be censored, modified, or altered, or not licensed, published, or promoted based on the content of the song or video. Again, this is that same thing relating to Pusha T. Right? They say Pusha T's name right there. Number 30 seeks the same with respect to any music by rapper Pusha T, including particularly The Story of Adidon, a different diss track from a separate feud that attacks Drake. Right? He wants them to point out all of the contracts that UMG artists have signed in which there may be language in their contract that says UMG has the right to veto, censor, modify, alter, or altogether not release music based on the content of the song or the video. Right? And remember, Pusha T talked about Def Jam with Chains and Whips. Whips and Chains. Yeah, Chains and Whips. About how the guys over at Def Jam were listening to the song, and typically they're listening for copyright issues, sample clearance issues, things of that nature. But this time around, they say, hey, what's up with this record? You talking about Drake on there? He's like, no, we ain't talking about Drake. What you mean? Well, what about this Donald Trump card line? Are y'all dissing Donald Trump? I'm like, what the fuck you talking about? We can't put the song out, man. We need to take Kendrick Lamar. You want to put this song out? Take Kendrick off. They said, we're not taking Kendrick off the record. They say, you know what? If you don't want to take Kendrick off the record, maybe we just don't put the album out. They say, dog, suck my right? Def Jam says, oh, we won't be doing the sucking other than your bank account. Okay? They say, we'd like to suck $7 million or something around that margin. And we need a percentage of the album from any label that you take it to. Clips went to Rock Nation. They put the album Let God Sort 'Em Out, has the song with Kendrick Lamar. Now Def Jam is getting a piece of the royalties off that record for letting them out of their contract ahead of time. All because of this type of suppression that Drake is referring to. And he's saying, yeah, show us all the history of you suppressing other artists' shit. And why didn't you do it to Kendrick? Number 29 is grossly overbroad and unduly burdensome. UMG has a catalog of more than 220 artists and brands and 3.2 million recordings. The idea that it should review records for every single song and music video that it exercised contractual rights or control over for the last 5 years to respond to this request, which sweeps as broad as seeking documents related to even the suggestion of modification, is absurd and unworkable. Numbers 29 and 30 also fail on relevance grounds. Drake alleges that UMG's standard long-form recording contracts includes a provision permitting it to eliminate material that it believes constitutes defamation or libel, and that any historical exercise by UMG of such rights is relevant. But UMG's capacity to censor or modify content under separate contracts has no relevance to the capacity to censor or modify content under a contract with Lamar. So maybe Kendrick's contract don't even have that in it. And they say whatever he's talking about isn't even relevant to his contract. UMG has produced the relevant sections of its contract with Lamar bearing on any rights to modify or censor his songs. That is the only contract relevant to Drake's defamation claim. So they saying we already gave you his contract and the sections that would pertain to modification or censorship. Now you want us to go through every artist contract on the label and show you the verbiage. Something tells me Kendrick's don't say the same thing his says. Drake's only other relevance argument is that documents showing any attempts by UMG to censor rap lyrics would be relevant to testing UMG's position that rap lyrics are not understood by the reasonable listener as conveying factual information. This argument fails because the reasonable person standard is, as the court noted, an objective question of law. The subjective views of any specific individuals or of UMG do not factor in. And remember, they were having issues of the judge having to identify who the reasonable listener is of these diss records and how they were perceiving the disses. Do they perceive them as fact or opinion? Judge still hasn't ruled on that. Request 31 and 33, Drake makes only a passing attempt to justify RFP numbers 31 and 33, CECF number 81 at 3, which are irrelevant, invasive, and entirely overbroad. And number 31, Drake purports to need documents showing 5.5 years of Interscope's monthly revenues and profits to be able to compare the financial impact of Not Like Us on Interscope and UMG to past years. The notion that Drake could isolate the impact of Not Like Us from Interscope's top-line financials is nonsensical, as any number of events in the previous half-decade account for shifting revenues and profits at Interscope. Okay, so they're saying Not Like Us ain't the only song that's popping over here. We have songs that came out in the past 5 years that have been explosive. Not to mention, they own hella artist catalog. You go back to any other era, the 90s, 80s, 70s, 60s, 50s. Think about TikTok and how random songs just pop off one day off of a trend, and next thing you know, that creates a spike in revenue for the artist, the label, etc. So they're saying anything could happen. Honing in on Not Like Us and comparing it to the rest of the label is crazy. Even taking his flawed position as true, Drake offers no basis as for why he needs 5 years of financial data. Drake's explanation for RFP number 33 is equally nonsensical. He states that he needs the valuation of Lamar's recording catalog for the last 5.5 years to support his theory that UMG was incentivized to promote Not Like Us not only to profit in the near term, but also to heavily monetize in the future. UMG wanted to prove it could immediately maximize Mr. Duckworth's value to convince him to re-sign exclusively with UMG long term. They say what this means is anyone's guess. Drake makes no attempt to explain why discovery on the historical value of Lamar's recording catalog has any relevance to his claim that UMG tried to convince Lamar to re-sign with UMG, or how that relates to Not Like Us. It does not. Okay? So what Drake is basically trying to say Interscope did is they came up once again with this whole plan. Hey, Kendrick, you want to be the number one guy, don't you? Well, if you want to go to number one, you got to go through the number one guy. And we're sick of his shit. Okay? Diss his ass. And we will not step in. All right? Know you're up for renegotiation. So is he. Fuck him. If you can dethrone him, we will make this worth your while for generations to come. All you got to do is follow suit. If you're short on content, he already invited you. He said, talk about the young girls. That's a gift from me. Take his gift. Fuck him. That's what Drake is saying happened. And Kendrick allegedly went in the studio under Interscope and UMG's direction, dissed the fuck out of Drake, and fucking turned him every way but loose in the span of a fucking week. Can you imagine? This dude be out here popping it crazy. I know we're supposed to be reading this, but this dude be out here popping it crazy. He been out here bragging about his contract. He been the number one guy. Who's the real CEO of Interscope? I bring all the bacon. He been talking crazy. And little old Kendrick Lamar in his purview dusted him off in 4 days or 5 days, whatever it was. And he been reeling out of control ever since. Let's get through the rest of this. Lamar contract. Drake's RFP number 1 seeks any contracts between UMG and Lamar reflecting UMG's right to approve, reject, refuse to publish, edit, amend, alter, or veto the publication of Lamar's songs or videos. The parties agree that UMG will produce any portions of his contract with Lamar reflecting such rights and redact the remainder. At Drake's request, UMG also agreed to leave the contract sections heading unredacted. UMG did just that. So they've already submitted this stuff, which we'll never see because it's already been placed under protective orders. Drake, nonetheless, now moves for an unredacted copy of Lamar's contract. So they already agreed on how his contract would be presented Now that he received it, he says, all right, now I want to see the rest of it. This appears to be another instance of Drake seeking discovery based on his grudges. Drake called on Lamar to release his contract during the rap feud. Put your contract up because we got to see the split. Ooh! Put your contract because we got to see the split. The way you doing splits, dog, your pants might rip. Sound like your whole fucking closet is full of ripped jeans and you trying to project on somebody. That's just my opinion, though. Drake cannot explain why the rest of the contract is relevant. He contends that redactions deprive him of context, but the portions of the contract bearing on UMG's right to refuse, reject, or otherwise edit Lamar's music videos or accompanying artwork have been produced and are entirely intelligible. You asked us for the section of his contract. We gave it to you in kind, gave you exactly what you asked for. Now you're trying to ask for more, which is completely outside of what we already agreed to. Drake contends that the contract should be produced in full on the principle that courts oppose unilateral relevance redactions. But that is not an absolute rule. Exceptions apply where, as here, commercially sensitive information is at issue. Let me read the rest of this real quick. Commercial information such as budget figures, performance metrics, and other business performed were properly redacted. Because remember, at the end of the day, whether you feel like Drake is a competitor or not, they're competition. And Drake is trying to see the verbiage in his competition's contract. Are you paying him more? Are you giving him a better royalty rate? How much? Hey, let me see the rest of it. What? Drake has made no showing whatsoever as to the relevance of the redacted portions, the subject matter of which may be gleaned from their headings. And the ongoing competition between Drake and Lamar requires the exercise of additional caution with respect to the commercially sensitive information. Drake also argues that the existence of the attorney's eyes only designation in the party's protective order abrogates any otherwise justified withholding or redaction of documents, including confidential or proprietary business information. Not so, as even with a protective order in place, the disclosure of commercially sensitive information can be harmful. That is, simply telling UMG to apply the AEO designation in the protective order does not eliminate the risk of harm from disclosure of its commercially sensitive information. So they're saying just because it's protected by this protective order and it's supposed to be for attorneys' eyes only, who's to say that it doesn't just somehow leak out by some mistake, unexplainable mistake, and now Kendrick Lamar's entire contract is leaked for the world to see? They're saying we are going to proceed with extreme caution about the sensitivity of this man's contract, particularly given the fact that the redacted information is not relevant. Redactions are appropriate. Accordingly, Drake's demand for an unredacted copy of Lamar's full contract should be denied. At minimum, the court should conduct an in-camera review of the contract before ruling on plaintiff's motion. On in-camera review. That's interesting. Respectfully submitted, Roland Ransom. So that's UMG and Lucian Grainge responding to Drake just days after Drake made his request for production into discovery, all of these sensitive details of people's contracts and financial incentives and things of that nature. He's saying y'all's whole plan was to shit on me, defame me, remove me from the conversation, and y'all would get a bankroll at my expense. And now I want to see how much y'all been making, how much you were making prior to this song being a global, massive, mega hit. And I want to prove it in court that y'all did this to me on purpose. I definitely was not expecting this video to be this long. I thought it was going to be a quick little whoop, 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 1-2. But in order to get through everything and, get to the context of what was being said, we had to take a little extra time. But yeah, UMG, they not rolling. Lucian Grainge, he ain't rolling. They saying you being ridiculous. You taking personal shots at Kendrick Lamar through us. You suing us, but your issue is really with him. You asking for the specifics of this man's contract, even outside the context of what you've already requested. You want to see his whole contract. You want to know how much his catalog is worth. Come on, man. What's going on? So we're going to have to see how the judge responds to this. I don't know, what the timeline is going to be for the judge to respond. But whenever Ms. Vargas does, we'll be right back here to evaluate, assess, and report. So just lock in with me. You know what I'm saying? Be sure to like and share this video. Be sure to, if this is your first time seeing me on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, become an insider. And I'm going to catch y'all on the next one. All right? Much love and respect. Peace.
King of my city and cul-de-sac. Coming out swinging like soldier rags. Leading my people like quarterback. Boy, I study this shit, I'm an almanac. Had to get up and grind. Knowledge is booming, I'm here to apply. Came with the chip and the dip, it just single the mind. We finna do more than survive. I need my check. Spinning the block for the Gouda. We hitting the jeweler to flood out the net. We don't do beef on computers, I'm straight out the sewer. We come when you rest. Niggas be looking perplexed, so keeping my foot on their neck. No map, I trust my gut for the quest. But drama, I'm fully abreast. I was ready for years and they doubted me. All of a sudden they tell me they proud of me. I been dropping these haters like calories. Cross them out, I came back with some boundaries. Stand for my honor, but too raw, no corner. Packing the stick with a drummer. Wanna catch my bad, won't fumble. I done came too far to be humble.